It up, my selector.
Due to some violent content, parental discretion is advised.
I know you gonna dig this.
The Maestro.
Fist hits the bag, 1, 2, and comes back. Single fist here. You hear that beat?
Think outside the box, and BO Xing on top of them, clocking them, sending back to the corner for oxygen. Golden gloves, I know myself, I know the game. It's not a game, I know the ring, I want the belt. Finding the rhythm to hit him, split him, and touch him, and tip him. Hit that six pack with that quick jab. Uppercut the bro, making them fall down, breaking them all down. Switch stands, tippy toe, in the hands, give him some more. Not Muhammad Ali, anomaly, a Mayweather, Pacquiao, prodigy in the midst of fist. This just as too hot to rock. Think out the box, you know I got the rock to speed back.
That would be a little drown.
And what's good, everybody? It's Amílcar, Maestro boxing here, Sunday morning. Daylight savings, actually. I didn't really realize that until I got out of bed. And my wife kept saying, oh, it's only 8 o'clock. I'm like, 8 o'clock? It's after 9 o'clock. And then I was looking and I realized, oh, shoot, we gained an hour last night. So hope everybody got an extra hour in. You know, you're using that time productively and all that good stuff. And maybe you're recovering from a fight party last night. I ordered some bomb-ass Indian food, you know, before this Canelo Plant fight. I enjoyed it. You know, honestly, first thoughts, just right off the gate, good fight. I felt that Plant did a lot more than I expected him to in terms of being durable. You know, he essentially took a beating, an absolute beating last night. So much so, in fact, that he couldn't stick around for the post-fight interviews and ended up having to go to, I believe it was the hospital, or at least a hospital in Las Vegas for, I guess, some much-needed medical care. It's understandable. He was in there with Nello. But I'm going to give Caleb Plant all the credit in the world, Joe. He stood up there. He did try to work that jab. He did try to throw combination punches. You know, I don't think Canelo was ever in any danger of losing the fight. People will probably argue with, Maestro, you know, he did great. He was winning. I don't think he was winning. I also don't think that he ever hurt Canelo. Canelo clearly didn't want to go in there with reckless abandon, and just go in there guns blazing to take his head off. We saw a very methodical Canelo last night, a Canelo that was thoughtful in what he was doing, was working behind his jab and using his feints as always, and working within the system that has been so effective for him and that has been crafted by the Reynosos. It was a cold, calculating performance that ended, typically as Canelo fights do, in a devastating fashion, you know. And, you know, with Caleb Plant not seeing the final bell. Now, people, again, are going to give Caleb Plant a lot of credit. And I give him a lot of credit. But it's also because I had such low expectations for him, if I'm going to be honest. You know, I went on the Boxing Voice yesterday, and my prediction was essentially what I said here on my own channel, okay? I predicted a Sports Center level highlight, multiple knockdowns. He did get 2 knockdowns, so multiple. Technically, I was right. If I'm going to be fair, I thought there'd be maybe 3 or 4 knockdowns. There were 2, and had it not been for the referee stopping the fight, I think some serious damage would have been done last night. So, look, Canelo by KO, I agree. I'm going to get to the comments in a second, but I do think that was the proposition to bet. Caleb Plant did last the 9 and the 5 plus, so he did hit the over last night, if anyone did bet that. But I was confident that he wouldn't see the final bell. You weren't really going to make much money betting on uh, a knockout unless you got the exact round right. And that's always going to be unpredictable because you don't really know if guys are going to get on their horses or if guys are going to stand there and try to win. And to Caleb's Plant credit, he did stand there and try to win. There is no doubt about it. So look, I'm north of New York City. I'm getting my walk in Westchester and Scarsdale. Got a couple friends up here that were kind enough to let us stay up here for the weekend. Very nice um, community, gotta say. It's crazy because you leave New York City, it's like a couple minutes out. It's like everything changes. It's quite residential and suburban. You wouldn't even know that I was really near New York City, but that's how New York City is. So let's get it going. JC, thank you so much for being here early, brother. Always appreciate you seeing uh, the light of day. You always also provide very good insights as it relates to the fight camp um, and the fight game specifically. JC, actually, you didn't need to see any light. You knew Canelo was going to light up Plant, and that's exactly what he did. You know, I went into the Thunderdome yesterday, otherwise known as the boxing voice, and there was a lot of voices there. I actually don't think know very much about boxing. I'm not talking about the host. I'm talking about a lot of the members of the audience that, for whatever reason, just want to always go with a PBC fighter, regardless of their likelihood of winning. Dre Dot, do the Sports Center thing. Well, I said two things about my prediction. I did it on this channel. One of them was pain. The other one was da-na-na, da-na-na. Really didn't go too well with the boxing voice audience. But you know what? Canelo made Sports Center, guys. He got it. He got it. It was Kenny the Jet Smith 2000 All-Star game. It was Canelo Alvarez. It's over, ladies and gentlemen. It's over. Okay, he got that dunk. All right. Honestly, the dunk would have been a little bit more spectacular, honestly, if, let's be honest, and I'm not trying to dog Caleb Plant, but at the time of the stoppage after the first knockdown, he was in total retreat mode, running away from Canelo. And it was difficult for Canelo to score the kind of knockout he got against Kovalev under those circumstances because he was kind of turning around and trying to survive, which anybody would. I would have been running around the whole. If I was training to fight Canelo, I wouldn't be like 235 plus 6'4". I'd get myself down to like 178 pounds, and I would just practice my marathoning. I'd just be running around the ring. Oh, Canelo, you're going this way. Oh, I'm going that way. Oh, you're going this way. Oh, I'm going that way, and I was just trained to run around the whole time. That fight is lasting as long as the referee allows me to run like a Kenyan marathoner. That would be my approach to Canelo. But that's why I do what I do, and these guys do what they do. They do things that we can't do, which is why we pay $80 to watch them on TV. Will Lynch, seems I was wrong, Maestro. Plant lasted longer than 90 seconds. Yeah. Look, Will, you're like me. When you make those predictions, it's about hyperbole. It's about, getting a reaction from people. We knew he was going to last longer than 90 seconds, but we also were very clear in that we knew that he was going to get the knockout. Dave Martinez. Martinez happens to be one of my family names, believe it or not. Dave says, tired of all the haters out there, been watching boxing since the 1970s. Fighters come and go. Just enjoy the boxing and stop being so goddamn hateful. I agree. You got to enjoy Mr. Canelo Alvarez for what he is. And what he is one of the best men ever to throw his hands in mano a mano combat. That's what Canelo is. People have got to start giving this man his props. They really do. They got to start giving him his props. There's no doubt about that. They got to stop hating on this guy. And look, as this Guy in the Beamer's driving extremely fast on a residential street, but it is what it is. So, yeah, look, Canelo, he's going to have his detractors. They don't want to recognize his greatness. And the fact, and this is no disrespect to Caleb Plant, he's a world champion. He walked in there with the IBF title. All right, he deserves all credit in that regard. But he had done nothing, nor have most people, quite frankly, that should be indicative of uh, a win versus Canelo. You picking him to beat Canelo, it's just not the case. He just hasn't done it. Good, thanks. So it is what it is. Very neighborly up here in Westchester. People stop and say hello to a black man randomly walking down the street with his camera phone out, getting some love from the people up here north of the Bronx, New York. That's always a nice thing. Good morning to you too, David. Thank you again. Will Lynch, if Plant decides to continue boxing, he will go far. He definitely impressed me last night. Hopefully he's not mentally shot. I agree. Uh, Funny thing, after the fight, he apologized for calling Canelo a motherfucker. I thought that was interesting, that he specifically apologized for that. I thought that Canelo was using that as kind of fuel, the way Jordan, if you watch The Last Dance, would create animosity with an opponent to use it as fuel for motivation. Because let's be honest, once you get to the level of a guy like Jordan or Canelo, you got to kind of dig deep at that point to continue to find motivation to just destroy opponents, right? I mean, you've got nothing to prove. People recognize you for what you are, which is a great athlete, right? So you've already got hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank sitting there. So you have to create motivation for yourself. And I feel like the animosity generated before this fight with Caleb Plant and Canelo was kind of part of that on with regards to Canelo. He needed to create some animosity. Caleb Plant provided it with the drug cheating allegations, and I think, like some other people do, that him getting mad before the fight was more about that than it was about the motherfucker comment. Because as it has been pointed out many times, he said that to Boo Boo Andrade, so he should have a good idea of what that is. Help me, says Canelo made Plant some pico de gallo, my friend. Yeah, he did. JC had it 7-3. He also says Plant wasn't doing shit. He was throwing a jab. He was landing combination punches. Canelo was blocking a lot of punches. Yes, he was getting hit. It is boxing, but a lot of Caleb Plant's work was being blocked by Canelo. And at no point did I see really Canelo have to retreat significantly, nor did I see Canelo hurt at all in the fight. At no point did I think Canelo was in jeopardy of losing this fight. It was a dominating performance. Let's not get it twisted. The only thing that I did start to question as the round started to rack up was whether or not he would get the stoppage. But the work was being put into the body. I mean, you could hear it round after round. Bop, bop, bop. Against the ribs and the liver and the general core body of Caleb Plant. He was just getting whipped up and bashed. And that made me believe that he was going to get the stoppage at some point. But look, Caleb Plant really impressed me last night with his toughness, because not a lot of guys would have stood in there with Nello and absorbed that punishment for as long as he did. And he clearly not only is tough because he was taking headshots, so he's got a good chin, but his body is rock solid too, because he was just getting destroyed to the body. And it wasn't until close to the end of the fight that he finally had to succumb and put those hands on the floor and take knockdowns. So yeah, got a super chat here from Dredot. Let's see if I could bring it up. I am on my phone, so things get a little bit tricky at times, but I will get to your super chat. And I'm just going to get to Will Lynch first. Will Lynch says, beating B-sides don't make you more. So let me take the shades off. Beating B-sides don't make you a need more A-side W's. Yeah, okay. I think I got the message there. Got these transitions that go from glasses to shades. But yeah, beating B sides doesn't really mean that you're gonna eventually beat A sides. That's not how it works. And like I said, steel sharpens steel. I've been saying that for a while. Dre Dot, I think we need to put more respect on Caleb's name now after that fight. He looked as if he belonged in that ring and was game to fight. He's legit. Two things about that comment. He proved that he could be in the ring with Canelo. There's no doubt about that. What he didn't prove is that he had any shot at all at beating Canelo. And I think Canelo proved that. Let's not forget you had people that were saying that Canelo could lose the plant. Those people include even the likes, believe it or not, of Andre Ward. Yeah. Andre Ward said that. I'll take off the shades. Andre Ward said that Caleb Plant would beat Canelo Alvarez, as did others. Take the shades off again. Leonard Ellaby said that Caleb Plant would beat Canelo Alvarez. So there were others as well, but those are two of the more prominent guys that said it. So look, he proved that he belonged in the ring, or that he could stay in the ring with Canelo. That in itself is a huge accomplishment. But I don't think that he proved that he had any shot at beating Canelo, which is at the end of the day what really matters in any sport, and especially in the sport of boxing. So straight out, come back to you right now. Canelo was missing shots as well, though he was missing shots, but Canelo was really blocking a lot of Caleb's combination punching specifically. I think Caleb was very effective with the jab. But by effect, I don't mean that it meant that he had any shot at actually winning the fight with the jab. He was just landing it a little more consistently than a lot of other people have been able to land on Canelo. And again, that's something that's to be, said and given him credit for. We got to give him credit for that. But yes, proved that he should be in the ring. Canelo proved, though, that he had no shot ever of beating him. Exactly, he won rounds and made Canelo work hard. How many rounds did you give him, Will? And not just Will, but anybody in the chat, okay? How many rounds did you give him? Because I agree with something here that Will then says, you don't just take a 3-belt champion to round 11 without clear success in the fight. I don't know if that's true, Will. I don't know if that's true. Because let's imagine that Lopez, I'll bring up a guy like Finito Lopez. He's an exquisite boxer, amazing talent, went 12 rounds with people. It really depends. Because people forget that Canelo's not just, I'll get you out of there with one punch guy. He is a boxer. So, generally, it is to be, again, you got to give him credit for going 11 rounds, but that doesn't mean that I think he was competitive in the fight. You can take an 11-round beating, which is what I think he took yesterday. Did he nick a round or two, maybe 3? Possibly, yes, but for the most part, it was Caleb Plant just getting beat up with body shots specifically, but also rights and lefts to the head. Again, I give him credit, all right, for being in there with Nello. I give him credit for lasting until the 11th. But what I don't agree with is, I've seen it out there already on social media, that he was somehow doing well in the fight. Even if you want to give the guy 3 rounds in an 11-round fight, and let's not forget, it's not like these are rounds where he knocked Canelo down or had Canelo hurt or busted up Canelo. It's 3 rounds where, he might have outpointed Canelo. 3 rounds out of 11 rounds, winning it like that doesn't really mean you were doing good in a fight. I think personally it was a dominating Canelo performance in that regard. But, again, I think that you got to give the guy credit for doing what he did. He's definitely did a great, job for what he brought to the table by lasting as long as he did. Boxing Monster, there's no second place. You know, he also says casuals tend to over exaggerate mediocre performances. Yeah, this is true. They do. And, you know, let's not also forget that the commentating crew last night was a PBC commentating crew. And, you know, they're not going to really be, let's just say, over the top enthusiastic about Canelo and underwhelming as it relates to what Caleb Plant's doing and is able to do. Omar Anaya says Canelo was in control the whole time. Plant is a tough fighter. That's essentially a very good summary of what I'm saying over here. He's a very good fighter. He's a tough fighter. He took Canelo rounds. He didn't get knocked out until late in the fight. People probably lost money last night because they bet an earlier round KO. So yeah, he said that. Sorry, you said that, and I agree with that. It is what it is. Soccer Dads Forum. Soccer Dads. You say Plant don't deserve no respect. If he fought more and put the work in, he could have won. These guys don't want to put in the work. Just elaborate on that in the chat if you can. Do you mean putting in the work in training, or do you mean putting in the work in the ring? I'm guessing you mean putting in the work in the ring. I think that if he got out of what he was doing any more than he did, he would have got knocked out a lot sooner. Uh, Caleb Plant was fighting within his skill set. If Caleb Plant abandoned some of that tight defensive style that he uses, or started to, you know, throw more, you know, shots with the intention of knocking out Canelo, if that's the kind of thing you mean, then I got to say that Canelo would have iced him early. Caleb Plant got as far as he did, I think, because he was disciplined, fighting behind a tight defense and a good jab, and opened up for combination punches when Canelo was not within range of doing much damage in return. That's how I saw it. But if you got something else to add, boom, boom, just use the chat right there. And I'd love to see what you got to say. Dre Dot comes back. He would have to be flawless at boxing in order to beat Canelo. This is true. Oscar says, "Where's Ellerby now?" My guess is probably um, somewhere in front of a camera that's like focused in on his nose and his shades. That's usually the only way I see Leonard Ellerby. As soon as somebody mentions Leonard Ellerby to me, I think of two things: nostrils and sunglasses. Yeah, Puerto Rican rum. Maestro, there are guys in certain YouTube groups that had planned pitching a shutout and even claim that the fight might be fixed. Wow. Wow. You see, this is an issue. Unfortunate. Um, it's an issue uh, that look. We exist in a world right now where people like to live in echo chambers, right? They don't like to hear different points of view. You know, it's one of the reasons I'm a fan of Jimmy Dore, who I had on Friday. You know, in the evening. Please check that out if you haven't. And apologies in advance for some of the audio issues I faced that day. But people have to be capable of listening to facts and coming to their own conclusions, and not just, you know, sitting around others that think the way they want to think, and allow them to live comfortable in their thoughts. Sometimes things make you uncomfortable. You know, you might get uncomfortable because the guy that you wanted to win loses a fight. That's okay. But the answer isn't to go onto a forum or watch a channel of some guy who tells you that the guy won. Does that remind you of anything? You know, if we take this outside of the boxing world and into other domains, sometimes people lose. That's okay. It's life, right? Don't just jump on the forums and then listen to people that tell you that the guy won. Come on now. Soccer Dad's Forum. Everyone knows Heyman's MO is that he holds belts hostage until he gets to release gets the release money. Plant was nothing more than plant food and Heyman pension fund money. There is the view out there, yes, that essentially Heyman was, cashing out Caleb Plant. But don't you think he did a good job at doing that? If you were his uh, fighter in Caleb Plant, wouldn't you want him to wait until he could maximize on the profitability or on the value of the IBF title and get you as much as possible for it? I mean, he got Caleb Plant a $10 million payday, which I believe is at least $2 million more than Callum Smith or than Billy Joe Saunders got for essentially doing the same thing, right? So yeah, you got to give Aram, you got to give uh, Al Heyman credit for that. He maximized the value of what his fighter has and was able to get him highly paid for it. Now, here's a question I have for the chat. I can't put up a poll because I'm on my phone, walking here, getting some early morning exercise. Getting that fat burn going before I stuff myself with a Sunday breakfast. What I will say is this, and what I want to ask is this: Caleb Plant went 11 rounds. Callum Smith went 12 rounds. Who did better against Canelo? Right? Billy Joe Saunders got knocked out earlier, but you could argue that he had more success prior to getting knocked out. Who did better? Caleb Plant or Billy Joe Saunders? Let's rank Canelo's last three championship unification fight opponents. All right, so the first one was Callum Smith. The second one was Billy Joe Saunders. The third one was obviously the one we saw last night in Caleb Plant, right? How do you rank them? Right? Let me know in the chat. How do you rank Canelo's last three championship opponents? All right, they're all in unification fights. Callum Smith, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant. Rank them. 1, 2, 3. Uno, dos, tres, un, deux, et trois. Rank them for me, please. Uh, Will Lynch is back. Uh, Actually, let me get the kamikaze. Salute Maestro. Ness from the Boxing Voice in damage control, saying it was a bad stoppage. Apparently, you keeping it unbiased. Dog, what is? Maybe I'll have to jump on the Boxing Voice after. I don't know. I really don't know. But so I'm gonna stop this for a second. I'm like I said. I've left the Bronx, New York this weekend. I'm up in Westchester. And boy, do people live nice up here. Telling you that right now. It's very nice. Just north of New York City. I got to tell you, now I know why people take these commuter trains to work. So yeah, let's get back to Ness. Ness, yesterday was going back and forth with me. I went up on there. I said what I had to say. I like going on there with Ness. He lets me talk my shit. He doesn't really have an issue with me. I'm saying what I believe, A lot of his fans don't necessarily like what I have to say, but I definitely disagreed with the people on his show, in his audience, that had Caleb Plant being competitive in this fight, that had Caleb Plant winning the fight. See, Ness's prediction was that Caleb Plant was going to go the distance and could possibly score an upset. He didn't say the last part. I want to be clear. But he kept kind of alluding to it, if you know what I mean. And look, I kept making the argument. When these upsets typically happen in boxing, number one, they're usually knockouts. There's no way Caleb Plant was knocking out Canelo last night. It wasn't going to happen. Nothing in Caleb Plant's track record, on his resume, in his history, even looking at him on the eye test, would tell you that he's going to knock out Canelo, a guy that hasn't even been close to getting knocked out. I think I might have only seen him even hurt even slightly once in a fight. I think it was the Cotto fight, maybe. But I mean, he's one of the more durable guys there in the sport of boxing. And Caleb Plant is a guy that couldn't knock out Caleb Truax. So how's he going to knock out Nello in his next fight? So that's number one. These upsets usually happen historically um, due to knockouts. Now, there are other times when people are thoroughly outboxed and it's kind of an upset, but usually when that happens in retrospect, you're kind of overestimating a power puncher and underestimating the skills of the guy that kind of got the quote unquote upset. And you know, an example of that for some people who thought it was a big upset, I wasn't really one of them, was B Hop against Trinidad. Right? That would be an example like that. B Hop was an underdog going into that fight and literally just outboxed Tito and eventually stopped him. Right? Uh, Ness brought up um, the recent loss by Mikey Garcia, which I didn't think was a really good example personally, because Mikey Garcia is an inactive fighter. So again, when these upsets happen, usually it's the guy was overlooked, or the guy that lost was overrated, or in Mikey's case there was inactivity, right? Or in other people's cases they had looming prison sentences, or court dates coming up, or background substance abuse issues, and all kind of things that we already know that Canelo isn't that type of a fighter. He's one of the more consummate professionals in the game. He trains hard year round. He doesn't abuse his body. He's not out there committing crimes, right? He doesn't have looming jail sentences or prison sentences ahead of him. And guess what? He also doesn't underestimate his opponents. So no, Canelo is not the kind of guy that is going to be surprised with an upset. All right, he's not the kind of guy that's going to be not training for a fight or overlooking his opponent. He trains for every opponent as if they're a potential killer, which is why he gets the kind of wins like he got against Caleb Plant, against Billy Joe Saunders, and also against lower level competition like an Avni Yildirim. Okay, he does not overlook guys. So I didn't agree with that, and I made that clear on the Boxing Voice. He wasn't going to get the upset. Canelo's not the kind of fighter that's going to get upset like that. He might lose a close fight, right? He might lose a close fight or be in a nip and tuck battle with a guy like Triple G. But A, that was earlier on in his career. And B, either Canelo or Triple G winning that fight wouldn't have been a huge upset. So, and in the Floyd fight, Canelo winning would have been a huge upset. So no, these kind of upsets don't really happen in that regard. Lennox was best saying Canelo didn't fight very well himself. I thought he did well. It wasn't the best Canelo we've ever seen, but I thought he did well. Boxing Monster thinks he won 2 to 3 rounds. SLKF 3 to 4 rounds. Oscar 3 rounds. I say 2 to 3 rounds. I agree with Boxing Monster. Omar Anaya says 3. Yeah, and Oscar Go says that he was breaking him down after the third. It wasn't competitive after the third. And even the first 2-3 rounds were kind of back and forth, kind of feeling each other out. But I feel that Canelo was asserting himself in the first few rounds, because it's not like Caleb Plant was really asserting himself in a way, actually, that would make you think that he was going to win the fight. So Dre Dot says it wasn't dominating. It was dominating. He beat the guy up for 11 rounds and then dropped him twice and would have knocked him like unconscious had it not been for Caleb Plant doing the smart thing and avoiding it. He was running away from exchanges before he got stopped, which is why I think the ref was close to pulling the trigger. And if Ness thinks, and I'll see if I can go on there after with Ness, but if Ness thinks that's an early stoppage, I mean, what do you do when the guy's like going this way? All right, well, I mean, he's going away from the action, right? He's turning his head. That on its own is enough reason to stop the fight. Guy turns around and isn't trying to engage. I mean, do you stop the fight right there? Whoa, whoa, whoa. He goes, good morning. Going this way. I'm still trying to fight. No, you're not. Wow, these people are really giving me some love up here in Westchester. She's got a nice young lady said good morning as she did her little run beside me. Very nice indeed. Let's get back to Will Lynch. He's come back with a super chat. Let me see if I can find it. Apologies, Will. I am on my phone, and it's not as clear as when I'm at my home setup. Um, here we go. I said it wrong. I think it's comparable to Cooney versus Larry Holmes. He held his own, but was clearly outclassed. That's why I said Plant did all right. Okay, I got it. That makes sense. That makes sense. Um, so losing track of some of the chats here, but I'm seeing a little back and forth about Mayweather. I don't know if you're mad that I brought, or you're complaining that I brought up Mayweather, or that somebody else brought him up. But yeah, Mayweather. I was just saying that Canelo was the underdog in that fight, but that look, he's not the kind of guy that's going to get upset by a guy like Caleb Plant, is what I was saying. That's all. Um, AHDZ says ref should have let Canelo ice Plant cold, put him in a coma. No, I don't agree with that. But maybe that's what Ness needed to see for it to not be a quote unquote early stoppage. Because it wasn't an early stoppage. It was an appropriate stoppage. Happened right when it was supposed to be done. You could have actually stopped it after the first one. But to the referee's credit, Caleb Plant was a champion and got the championship, what do we call it? Respect or leeway or opportunity to fight to the end, right? So it is what it is. So let's turn this into something else, though, because I did want to talk about what's next before I get up out of here. You know, where does Canelo go from here? Where does he go from here? The question is really, does he stay at 168? Does he move up to 175, right? Because I don't see him moving down to 160 again, and I also don't see him going up higher than 175. So now we got to look at what's out there for Canelo in the 168-pound landscape, and then at the 175-pound landscape. And then I'll ask you guys, which of those two you kind of think is best for you as fans, or best for Nello as a fighter. Both in present day and in terms of legacy, right? Is it more impressive, for instance, for him to amass 10 defenses of the undisputed championship at 168 and then retire, or go on longer than that and then retire? Or would it be more impressive for him to do what Usyk is currently on a war path to do, and that's become undisputed for potentially at two weight classes, right? Usyk was undisputed at 200 cruiserweight. Now it's attempting to go up to heavyweight and become undisputed two-weight champion, something that's never been done in the four-belt era. I think only Evander Holyfield accomplished it in any era. Could be wrong, because obviously there was an era before where there was just one title or was just two titles. So I'm really only talking about the 3 and 4 belt era when I say this, right? So let's look at 168. Well, the names now, unless you're going to start going into mandatories from places like England, are, I don't know if they're really pay-per-view blockbuster type fights, but I think Benavidez could be, right? If Benavidez gets the win next week, I think it could be, right? I think that's a really big fight. I think people would be interested in that fight. So that kind of makes sense. That's another PBC fighter, though. Would that fight take place on the Zone? Hopefully it would. Or might it go back to Showtime pay-per-view? Hopefully it won't, because I don't like spending $80 to watch boxing. Okay, and I also don't like spending $80 and then not being able to go back and watch the fucking fight in the morning, which I would be able to do as many times as I want if I was watching the fight on the zone. All right, because I tried to rewatch the fight this morning on the Showtime app and the shit was gone, disappeared, poof, finito. I don't like that. I want to be able to, wake up in the morning, make my Bustelo espresso, and watch the fight again. Couldn't do it this morning. Ended up having to go to Daily Motion and finding some Russian stream of the fight. I got to get my Russian game up. But it is what it is. So look, we got Benavidez at 168. That's potentially a pay-per-view fight, right? Hopefully not. I hope it goes to the zone. Who else is out there? Well, David Morrell Jr. I think he's another guy, but he's unknown for the most part. I like him. I also don't think he's ready for Canelo. I don't think he's as seasoned as David Benavidez. You've got Anthony the Dog Durrell, who was on the co-feature, and got a spectacular KO performance. But if you're going to be honest, you got to also look at the opponent there. Again, not that high on that. And essentially, everybody else at 168 is not really up for it, man. I mean, there was a lot of hype and hoopla, about the top ranked kid from out here in New York. I'll remember his name in a minute, but he got knocked down a few times in his last fight. Puerto Rican kid, Hector Belanga. He ain't ready for Canelo. That would have been something that would have been kind of intriguing before because of the knockout streak and all of that. But let's face it, he's definitely not that dude that he was being portrayed to be. So we're talking really about maybe a rematch with Golovkin at 168, right? We're talking about potentially a Charlo fight, Jamal Charlo, if he goes up to 168. But after the last Charlo performance, it's like, I like Jamal Charlo. I really do. But I think it's pretty clear that Canelo was not ducking this dude when he went to 160, because don't forget that narrative. Oh, God, Maestro, Canelo moved to 168 because he didn't want to fight Charlo at 160, and he ducked, and he didn't want to fight for the real WBC middleweight championship. Not really. He wanted to become undisputed. There weren't that great fights for him at 160. He didn't want to give Triple G a rematch or a third fight, a fight that I don't need to see. So he let it be, and he moved to 168, and now he's undisputed, so people could really shut the fuck up because he did something that most people in boxing never do, and that's become undisputed in a weight class, right? And he did that. I don't think there was a path to undisputed at 160 at the time that was as clean, right? I think that it was a lot murkier at 160, the waters, in terms of finding that clear path to being a four-belt undisputed champion. Just my thoughts, okay? As JC says, Nello ran a true division, or ran through a division in a year, and y'all still complaining. That's exactly it. I mean, the guy fought, what was it? He fought, let's get it right, guys. He fought Callum Smith last December. Then he fought Abney Yildirim, I believe it was in February, right? Then he was back in what was it, May for Billy Joe Saunders. And then flash forward, and he's taking on Caleb Plant in November. That's 5 fights, guys. I believe that's 5, right? Smith, Yildirim, Saunders, and no, it's not 5. It's 4. But that's still a lot of fights. That's 4 fights, and people are still complaining. Dude, he's undisputed. He took on everybody there is to take on. What more do y'all want? What more does Canelo got to do? And he gave us those fights mostly off pay-per-view. Okay, I didn't pay $80 a fight for those. I watched those fights on the zone. This fight should have been on the zone, right? Unfortunately, it wasn't. We had to pay $80 for it, but it is what it is. So stop complaining, as JC said. Just stop it. All right, there's no reason to complain. So 168. Do those names, do they appeal to you? Do they appeal? David Benavidez Jr., does it appeal or not? David Morrell Jr., does it appeal or not? Anthony the Dog Durrell, does that appeal to you or not? Right? I don't think we got to talk about Berlanga. I really don't think we got to talk about mandatories from out there in the UK. Although he'll have to fight guys like that he's if he's going to maintain these 4 belts. He's got to take on all comers. But do you want to see him try to maybe get 10 consecutive defenses at 168? Or should he move up to light heavyweight? All right. Now let's look at the light heavyweight scene. Right. Also, I forgot to throw in Charlo and Triple G because they would have to move up to 168 if they want to get a shot at Canelo. So 175, this, guys, is where I think it becomes interesting. All right. I actually think that it's very interesting what could potentially happen at 175. And I'll tell you why. Joe Smith Jr., he's been all over ESPN. He's got a little bit of buzz. They could do a garden fight here in New York. They could do a Yankee Stadium fight, which I think would be great. They could do a fight at Arthur Ashe Stadium where, AEW, the professional wrestling promotion, showed that you can put on a great event at Arthur Ashe Stadium, home of the U.S. Open. All right. They could put on a fight here in New York City against Canelo. He gets an automatic crack at that WBO title at 175 because he's currently the champ at 168 with the WBO, right? So he could move up, take on a guy like Joe Smith. I think that's a very winnable fight for Canelo. Get back the title that he won from Kovalev, but then had to give up, right? And then move on to the likes of Peterbiev, right? And to the likes of Azurdo Ramirez, should he be able to get past a guy like Peterbiev. Those are all very interesting fights for Canelo, I think. But Zurdo Ramirez has actually been calling out Bivol, trying to get that fight. I think Bivol is trying to hold on for Canelo fight. But I don't know if you saw the fight with Richards. Based on what I saw with Richards and Bivol, I personally think that Zurdo Ramirez is good, is a great fight for Bivol. Now, if you have Ramirez taking on Bivol, getting a title, right? And you have on the other side of the bracket, so to speak, you've got Canelo going after either Beterbiev or Joe Smith, and then you getting some kind of a unification there at 175. Now we're talking Canelo going after legacy again because it's a 2-weight undisputed championship, and that's motivating for a guy like Canelo. That's motivating, right? So that's what I think. Brandon Lenz, I just noticed you in the chat, brother. Thank you for all that you do with the boxing voice. I know you're the man behind the scenes. Brandon, the magic man, Lenz, making it happen. All right, getting things going, setting up the show, letting people like yours truly cook when they go on to TBV, the boxing voice, and get their opinions across. So, look, those are the names I think at 168. All right, you've got Triple G potentially moving up. You've got Jamal Charlo potentially moving up. Right, you've got David Benavidez out there that I think people would want to see, and you of course have the likes of the Mando types, the mandatories. David Morrell Jr. holding on to the regular WBA title. And the name escapes me. But somebody out there in the chat help me. The mandatory under the WBO. He's out of England. I can't remember his name right now, but I as good as those names might sound to people, I think the names at 175 pounds are better. Bivol, Smith, Beterbiev, and Zurdo Ramirez, right? I think that those names are good names. That's kind of what I see. So, look, let me know though in the chat what you guys think. Should he go for consecutive defenses of the 168 title. I don't think he's ever going to catch Calzaghe or some of the other names on that list. But at the same time, those guys weren't undisputed. Or should he go up and take on some of the killers, the heavy hitters at light heavyweight, right? I could go either way, but if I had gun to head pick one of the two, I am going to pick 175 pounds. I'd love to see Zurdo Ramirez Canelo. I'd love to see Beterbiev Canelo. I'd love to see even Bivol Canelo, although not so much. I don't know about love. I'll watch it. I'd like to see it. Um, and I definitely like to see Joe Smith Canelo. I think that's going to be interesting for as long as it lasts. Thank you, boxing fan Zach Parker. That's the name I was looking for that I couldn't remember off the top of my head. Don't call me a casual though, because I couldn't remember Zach Parker. I did know that he had a WBO mandatory out of the UK. I forgot the guy's name. I did see his last fight, but yes, that's the WBO mandatory. So we've got some, debate in the chat about whether or not Canelo is capable, essentially, of fighting at 175, or maybe not fighting, but having success at 175 pounds. I think that he will have success at 175 pounds. I think that he's shown he's got a really good chin. He's got power that carries, right? And at 175, he kind of brings in advantages, I believe, in hand speed against a lot of the guys at 175 pounds. Definitely a Joe Smith. I thought he was matching Caleb Plant pretty well in terms of speed last night. And Caleb Plant, his main asset, if you ask people going into the fight, was the jab and speed. So, yeah, I think he'll do fine at 175. And I think that the Kovalev fight showed that as well. Oh, yeah, well, Maestro, Kovalev was shot. He was past it. He just fought Anthony Yard. Well, I love it how people look back when it comes to Canelo and make excuses for why, he was able to beat his past opponents. A lot of people picked Kovalev going into that fight. A lot of people said his jab would be vicious, his height, his size. Canelo's going to struggle with him. And you see, the beautiful thing, guys, is the internet. The internet is the internet. And when guys during a fight are like on Twitter saying, I told you so, look, Canelo's getting beat up by Kovalev with the jab. I told you, Maestro. And then a few rounds go by, and then their guys crumpled along the ropes after getting brutally stopped. They act like they didn't say that. And then a week later, it's, he was on short notice, and, he drinks a lot of vodka, and he doesn't train seriously, and, that he was tired because he fought Anthony Yard prior to taking on Canelo. Well, which is it? Because first you're telling me that Kovalev's jab was going to rule the day, and that his size and his reach, and Canelo's biting off more than he can chew. He can't handle a real 175 pounder, right? Then after the fight, the excuses come. Oh, well, it was Kovalev. Kovalev's washed. Kovalev's a scrub. Kovalev. Come on, man. So look, yes, I think that victory was telling. Kovalev was a legit 175 pounder. I don't care what anyone says. All right, after the fact, that was a legitimate win at 175, and Canelo should have been given credit for it. And I think it shows us too that now Canelo is capable of handling that division and should be able to move up and will have success there. Does anyone in the chat, all right, anybody in the chat think that he cannot beat Joseph Jr. at 175? If you do, all right, hands up, or better yet, just use your fingers there, type it out in the chat, let me know, because I think that that's the title for him. Call up the WBO. I want my immediate shot. I'm a 168-pound champ. I want Joe Smith. We're going to do it at Arthur Ashe. We're going to do it at Yankee Stadium. We're going to do it in the Garden. We're going to put on a big show for all of the Canelo fans, boxing fans, New York fans, global fans, and we're going to do it right. I think that that's a winnable fight for Canelo. I think he will beat Joe Smith Jr. if he fights him. And from there, he can go on to the likes of Beterbiev. And like I said, if we can get Bivol and Zurdo to fight each other, right? And we can get a path to some undisputed title at 175, then that's legacy status for Canelo. At that point, he's going for what Usyk is trying to do at heavyweight, which is be a two-weight undisputed champion in the four-belt era. That is no small feat, should it happen. JC, with the super chat, why are people putting pressure on Nello? He needs to do this. He needs to do that. He can do whatever he wants. Keep calm and give Nello his flowers. Look, I agree. Look, the thing is, it's like this. In many ways, I view Canelo the way I view LeBron James. LeBron James, great basketball player, one of the best, definitely of all times. There was a time when I thought it was clear he was the best basketball player in the league, but the man had his haters. He couldn't do anything right, right? Oh, he goes to Miami to win a championship. Oh, he left Cleveland. You know, he had to compile a super team to win. I hate him. I hate King James. King James sucks. I don't like LeBron James. Okay. Goes back to Cleveland, wins a championship there. Oh, yeah, LeBron, he's in the East. The East doesn't count. The East is weak. I don't like King James. He sucks. It's the same thing with Canelo, man. All right? James goes to LA, wins the championship. Oh, LeBron only won because it was the bubble. That doesn't count. That's not a real championship. It was different in the bubble. It was harder in the bubble for these other teams. Well, wasn't it harder for him too? Well, that doesn't matter. I just don't like King James. I don't like LeBron. It's the same thing, all right? And I could do the same annoying sports fan if I applied this to name your favorite athlete in another sport, right? I'm sure there are people out there saying the same things in the past about Lionel Messi or about Cristiano Ronaldo, right? Or about, name your guy. It's just part of being an elite athlete. You got your detractors, you got your haters, and you got people, JC, that unfortunately can never do right. All right? You can never do right. It is what it is. Wilden says, you think he will beat Joe Smith Jr.? I agree. Isan says he can beat Joe, not Bivol or Arthur. Why don't you think he can beat Bivol or Arthur? I saw Richards doing pretty well against Arthur. I thought he did really well. Sorry, not against Arthur, against Bivol. When Bivol went over there to the UK. And at the end of the day, I don't really think Bivol should be waiting on Canelo. Like, the guy's fighting on undercards of shows in the UK. Like, I'm sure he's got a pretty good minimum with his situation, but I'm sure he wants a big fight. Take on Zurdo, man. I heard somebody earlier say that Zurdo doesn't actually want to fight. I don't know why you think that. I think Zurdo wants to fight. He's been calling for it. And I don't know about everybody here, but I was very impressed by Zurdo's KO against Sullivan Barrera, a guy who has been very sturdy throughout his career for the most part, but got absolutely obliterated and annihilated by Zurdo Ramirez in his last fight. Okay? So let's get Zurdo Bivol, hopefully. All right, and I think that Canelo Beterbiev will be an absolute war, okay? I would personally just like to see Canelo take on a Joe Smith first, just to kind of acclimate himself back to 175 and get that big win, okay? El Pero Hernandez, my guy. This guy knows what the fuck he's talking about. not like other idiots on boxing. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Hit that like button, guys. Hit that subscribe button. I do this regularly on Monday nights with my brother Kenny T from here in New York City. I'll be back in the Bronx tomorrow. By the way, I'm going to go see the New York City FC game today. That should be a lot of fun. So I'll be back in the Bronx today. Tomorrow, live from the Bronx. All right. My brother Kenny T is actually out there in Washington Heights. We do Mano a Mano live, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Check your local time zones to figure out what time that is where you are. And then you can always catch me around the HCP network of shows. All right. We got HCP, which is Tuesdays. All right. On my brother D Style Boxing's channel. Great content on D Style Boxing. You can catch me on and around Ringside Reporter Live, which is 6 p.m. Eastern. Okay. Here on Sunday nights. That's going on later today. And I'm always on the HCP Roundtable Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on D-Style Boxing, on Ringside Reporter, here on my channel, and on G-Funky Boxing, because we rotate the Roundtable week to week on our channel. So, look, Canelo did his thing. He got the win. All right? People are going to make out that Caleb Plant did great, that Caleb Plant was in the fight, that Caleb Plant was potentially winning the fight, could have won the fight. I've already heard people saying that, oh, there was an early stoppage. No, there wasn't. Okay, Caleb Plant had no chance of winning this fight. He was in there, all right? He took a beating for 11 rounds, all right? He did better against Canelo than a lot of people have, and he deserves credit for it. But do not fool yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Do not fool yourselves into believing that Canelo was ever at risk of losing this fight last night, because he was not. He was never at risk of losing that fight. He was in control. You rarely saw him in retreat. You didn't see him hurt at any point, okay? And what you did see him was blocking, okay? Blocking a lot of that work that Caleb Plant was giving him. But Caleb Plant was somewhat successful at landing the jab. But guess what, guys? This is boxing. You're going to have a punch or two or three every round landed on you, sometimes more than that, and still win a round. That's what it is. That's the equivalent of you saying that the guy was competitive in a tennis match because he was able to return a serve. No, like he didn't win game, set, match. Canelo was in control. Canelo won the fight. Canelo proved why he is the most skilled and the most accomplished fighter in the sport, along with Alexander Usyk, Tyson Fury, and a few others that I would give a lot of credit for too. Guys like Inoue, guys like Terrence Crawford. Okay, he's one of the best doing it. He controlled it. He did what he needed to do the way he wanted to do it. That's not what happened on the other side. All right, Caleb Plant did what he could do when he could do it, and there's a big difference. And then when Canelo, took that away from him, the fight was over. And he got the da-na-na, Sports Center highlight KO. Would have been a much more savage KO, but Caleb Plant did the right thing, being the veteran that he is. He was turning his back. He was out of the way from the referee. All right, referee had no choice but to stop the fight. Right? When you turn your back on the referee, on your opponent, on the referee, and the fight stops, especially if you're also getting a barrage of punches and you're leaning over, guys, that's not an early stoppage, okay? That isn't an early stoppage. So, look, we've got some opponents for Plant if you want to finish up with him, talking about him. What do we got for Plant? We've got Anthony the Dog Durrell. That's a good opponent for Plant, okay? It's a good opponent for Plant. He's there with the PBC, all right? I think that Plant is a good opponent for David Morrell Jr. I definitely think that if David Morrell Jr. wants to make a statement, okay, give Caleb Plant a shot at that WBA. It's got to do this right. Regular title, okay? Give him a shot at that. Make a name for yourself, right? What if you can stop Caleb Plant if you're David Morrell Jr. in 6-7 rounds? All right, now they're like, wow, that's the guy Canelo knocked out in 11 rounds. This kid from Cuba just knocked him out in 6 rounds. All right, that's got to be motivation if you're David Morrell Jr. So this is what it is. Yeah, AHDZ, you're right, bro. Caleb Plant gets extra credit for making it to the late rounds. All right. It's like Roger Federer is playing somebody, and Roger Federer didn't get him out of there in 3 sets. All right, he got him out of there in 5 sets. Oh, this was a competitive matchup. No, but wait a second. I mean, he won every set in a landslide. Oh yeah, but he made it to 5 sets. He did great. Well, he did better than a lot of other people because most guys lose to Roger Federer in 3 out of 5, first 3 sets. Yeah, but he made it to the end. Yes, he made it to the end. I get it. But he got controlled and dominated the whole time. Yeah, but he landed a jab. He landed a jab. I get that. I get that. Yeah, but what about the combination punching? Yes, I understand that. He landed a jab. There were some combinations landed. But Billy Joe Saunders got knocked out way earlier and got his orbital bone broken. I get that. Different fighter. All right, different circumstances. I'm not saying that Caleb Plant didn't do a good job for what he could do. He did. But don't fool yourselves. Again, don't fool yourselves into believing that he was ever going to win this fight. All right. So Caleb Plant did what he could. All right. Did what he could. All right. Got to give him his credit. All right. He went to 11 rounds, but he was not going to win this fight. He did not dominate Canelo at any point. He did not push Canelo back, really. All right. He did not hurt Canelo. All right. So where does he go? Well, I'm seeing the name Charlo. Charlo might be a good one. See, because the thing is now, Caleb can be used as a litmus test to Canelo. Like, Charlo might say, well, I could take on Caleb if I can stop Canelo. So if I can stop Caleb better, then, now my name's ringing. Now people are going to want to see me take on Canelo and maybe start demanding it. Same with David Benavidez Jr., but I think, he's got a more straight line shot to Canelo, but definitely, sorry, I keep saying Benavidez Jr., that's his brother, David Benavidez, sorry, or David Morrell Jr., that's the junior I was looking for. All right, David Morrell Jr., give Caleb Plant a shot at that regular title, all right, and see what you could do against him. As for Canelo, go up to 175, take on Joe Smith, take on the other guys at 175. People are saying that Beterbiev's too much, right? He's out of that Ramsey offensive Montreal style of boxing. Big up to Mark Ramsey, one of the most underrated trainers in the game. I do really appreciate and respect Mr. Mark Ramsey a lot. All right. Take on Beterbiev. All right. Try to become undisputed in 2 weight classes, 4-belt era, like Alexander Usyk is attempting to do. That's what I think should be happening. That's what I think I would do if I was Canelo. Ain't much happening at 168 because of the names, yo. He's already shown he's the best. You've done it. You did it in a year, Canelo. 4 fights. Undisputed. Year. Nobody's doing it like you. You can leave on that. You can demand your shot at Joe Smith. You can get back the WBO title. You can take on the challenges at 175, and you can do 2 weights, 2 championships. You might even be able to get it done faster than Usyk or Fury in terms of becoming 4-belt champion at 175. So why not try to get it done, right? That's what I think. So look, I want everybody to enjoy this Sunday. We all got that extra hour of sleep tonight, hopefully. Right, daylight savings. I'm up north of New York City. I'm heading back there later today. It's going to be mano a mano with my brother Kenny T, Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button, type in hashtag HCP. Find all of our content up there. It's me, it's D-Style Boxing, it's G-Funky Boxing, it's Ringside Reporter Joe Habib. We are the best doing it on YouTube. That's it for me, guys. I am out of here. I want everybody to have a great rest of the Sunday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. Peace. I'm out of here.